Welcome back to the channel. It's Saturday evening. It's time to talk about the very best comic books that you could read this week. And subbing in for Drew, because he's in Chicago, is my good friend Jim from Weird Science. How you doing, Jim?
Hello, Wes. Thanks for having me, and I hope Drew's having a good time in Chicago.
And for those of you who don't know, Jim has street cred. He's been outlawed by DC Comics. You guys are still a renegade comic review site.
We are. They still hate us. They tell me on the reg all the time, but I keep sending them, you know, our 3 out of 10 reviews to the email that I used to have to send them, just, you know, to let them know we're still here.
You know what's weird is we're going to recommend 3 DC Comics and no Marvel here, but Marvel haven't outlawed you guys.
No, Marvel's fine with us. Every other company, it seems fine. It's DC, and it's weird because they seem to want to, you know, kind of control the narrative, but it's kind of gotten away from them anyway, so I think it kind of backfired.
Absolutely, it always backfires on them. And this isn't a great week. We just got to come out front with that one. There is one, what I would call great comic book, and a couple of others. Like I'd probably put Superman Annual in there anyway, but a couple. Yeah. The other one that I'm going to recommend, I don't know that it would have made it on a good week, but we do have 5 comic books to talk about. Let's talk about the really good one first. The Enfield Gang Massacre, #1, Image Comics. Chris Condon, Jacob Phillips on this one, the creative duo behind That Texas Blood. I was late to the party with That Texas Blood. I got in here on the first issue on this one, and I believe this one actually starts out even better than that series. I happen to be an enormous fan of Western comic books. We've got a gang that's, you know, obviously they're bad, they're committing crimes, but, you know, the main guy's not so bad. He's got some likable qualities to him. He's been working over the same bank for a long time in this county in Texas, and the guy ends up dead, and that kind of starts out the big mystery, but it's the art that really is mesmerizing in this. It feels like I'm back in the 70s watching Westerns with my dads again.
Yeah, and it even goes from the cover on. I mean, that cover really looks like a pulp deal. And I'm not a huge Western comic fan like you, but I really like this. And I liked it enough to then go and check out That Texas Blood. I actually ordered the first volume or whatever the deal, because I want to read more of this, because the character work was really good. It really was. And the mystery set up well. It just is a good comic.
Absolutely. I think the thing that Chris Condon did very well, writers in today's comics are struggling to make the heroes likable and relatable. And he's got guys that they're the heroes, they're the main players, but they are bad guys. They are criminals. And he's able to make them likable and relatable, and to where you kind of root for them, even though you know they're doing bad things. And a lot of people can't even do that with Superman nowadays. So job well done.
It's true. Yeah, and it's kind of that like play with like a Quentin Tarantino or even like a Sopranos. There's always those things that, yeah, these guys are bad, but you actually see, you know, with character work, actually see, okay, I can get behind him, and they're trying. It's almost like the 2 days till retirement type deal in this that made me giggle as well. But I really did like it. And I liked the setting. I liked that everybody felt like a fleshed out character right away, and not everybody. It wasn't like these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. It's all kind of a mix in there, and it makes sense for the, you know, the story.
And that is definitely the best comic book that we're going to recommend this week. I mean, it's really damn good, especially like Westerns. We don't get to talk about Western comic books enough here. I personally love the genre. Although the next comic book recommendation is kind of a Western. Gunslinger Spawn, 23, Image Comics, Todd McFarlane, Brett Booth. For my money, probably the best looking comic book on the shelves, has been for a couple of years now. The art is just absolutely spectacular. This is a little bit less about Gunslinger Spawn because he is being involved in the big events that are going on in the mainline Spawn series, but it ties into that a little bit. And we see mostly Dakota, who was introduced very early on in the series. She's a very striking character, has a really cool look to her, and she's having some daddy issues. In fact, he tries to throw her into like a pit of despair, and she uses a whip and takes him with him. And we get a pretty good character reveal, kind of character study on who Dakota is, and really flesh the character out better. The art is still absolutely fantastic. We do get some action here, and Dakota is very interesting to me.
Yeah, and it's funny because I haven't been reading Gunslinger Spawn, and we're at issue 23, but because we're doing this, I read it, and right away, I mean, it looks fantastic. Brett Booth's art's great. I just, you know, you could just look at that, and I got Dakota, and I'm like, all right. And it actually got me a bit interested to maybe go back and read some of the stuff. It's tough. We're already at 23 issues, but it still did get me inspired. I did like what I read. It's just I'm not caught up to it. But boy, it looks awesome.
Yeah, it looks like $1 million. And, you know, Todd McFarlane's been leading up to some very big moments for Spawn, and obviously Gunslinger Spawn's going to play a big part in that. He's really kind of the breakout character outside of Spawn so far. Normally, at this point, Jim, we would talk about Marvel Comics and what we're recommending, but we're not recommending anything for Marvel Comics. Their week absolutely sucked.
Yeah. Yeah, it really did. And I almost recommended one thing, but I just couldn't do it. It would have been Avengers by Jed McKay.
It would have been a pity recommend.
It would have. And that's the thing. I didn't want to go to the idea of, well, we need to do a Marvel thing, because with that series, well, some people seem to like it. It's just not hitting me. But everything else isn't either. It's okay. But boy, Marvel is just at a point where it's tough to recommend mostly, all the books. So it's tough.
Yeah, we're not even going to give you pity recommends Marvel.
No.
Let's go over to DC, where we actually have 3 recommendations this week. Superman Annual 2023, number 1, Joshua Williamson, with about 15 or 16 different artists on this one. I've heard a lot of people say this is damn near perfect, including Yul Carter from Fantastic Comics. And while I do agree it's a good comic book, I can't go with perfect, but there is a lot to like about it. Other than the fact that there's not really any Superman in the comic book itself, but it's kind of a day in the life of Lois Lane, as she's the temporary editor-in-chief of the Daily Planet, and she's handing out stories and changing perspectives, and things are happening all around the city. And there's a lot of kind of goofy jokes and some shenanigans, and you do see Superman a little bit here and there. But if you love Lois Lane and you're very interested in the Daily Planet, this probably does feel like a perfect comic book. But if you like Superman and you like the things going on in Metropolis, it's pretty damn good. It's certainly close to being worth the cover price, which Spider-Man 31 wasn't.
No, and it's good. I mean, everybody's losing their mind over it. There's a lot going on, so you get the bang for your buck. But as you said, you don't get a lot of Superman, which then in the back of my mind worries me, because when are we going to get back to this stuff when we do have Superman? Now, some of the stuff does set up some Superman stuff. There's a crazy reveal at the end. But even at that point, I thought, oh my, it's avalanching, everything being thrown. It almost felt like hey, here's my plan for the next 3 years type of deal thrown out there. And I did have fun with it. It's just at the end, I did want a little more Superman and wonder where all this stuff will go. But like you said about Lois being the, editor-in-chief at the moment, the idea that she ends up saying, hey, everybody, we need stories, so I want you all to go out and do things you've never been hired for, ever did. That seems more like something you do for 6th graders than actual newspaper. It was odd, but it led to some fun.
Yeah, it did make a whole lot of sense, but I guess for story purposes and introducing some of these new concepts, it kind of works. The next one is a U recommendation. I haven't actually read this one. Night Terrors, Green Lantern, number 3, Jeremy Adams, Eduardo Pansica. I like Jeremy Adams, and I like his Green Lantern run, but after I read a couple of issues of Night Terrors, I was kind of checked out on it, but the art does look pretty cool.
The art's great, and I don't want this to sound like a pity deal. We already said we're not going to give those, but most of the Night Terrors tie-ins, and really with the reveal this week in the main book, they're not going to mean anything. But if you go in and you like what Jeremy Adams unfortunately started and had to stop with, you do end up pretty much having Hal Jordan beat the crap out of insomnia / parallax and all the things in the nightmares. And it really does show you, okay, Hal is a great guy. He ends up just really going action packed. And it's really also the art is taking center stage. And I really liked it. It was one of, if not one of my favorite of the tie-ins for the Night Terrors, which I haven't loved. So I did like this though.
I'm not surprised that Jeremy Adams has the standout tie-in to Night Terrors, but I think DC Comics are probably regretting Night Terrors right about now.
I think they are. They have to be. I mean, nobody's really that excited for it, and most of the people talking about it are saying, why did you stop the Dawn of DC and these books that actually were gaining some traction? It's a shame. It's a real shame.
You know what's also a shame? If you want some good Superman, well, you get Superman Annual this week. But you might need to go over to manga. Last week I reviewed Spider-Man Fake Red with Doc, and then this week you're going to recommend Superman versus Meshi Chapter 3 from Satoshi Miyagawa and Kai Katago.
Yeah, and I know that people yell at me. The last time I was on subbing in and I said I wanted to put a manga, people lost their minds. But this is a DC manga. It is on the app. And here's the thing. It's not going to blow your mind. It's not a story that's going to be the best of all time. It's not even serious. It is Superman wanting to try out different foods. But the fun of it is that you're never going to get something like this in DC Comics. You're never going to have a story like this. And it's fun to see Superman kind of not vulnerable, but kind of little quirky. He's a little cheap. He ends up having a lot of discussion in his head about this food and how it like ties into things. And I actually am having a lot of fun with it. Again, if you're going to read it, it's probably going to be through the app. So you already have the app. Give it a try. I'm actually enjoying the manga from DC.
Who would have thought Superman versus Meatballs would be the story of the year?
I know. Again, maybe to some. It's not going to win awards, but I think it's a lot of fun. It's something that if you're down on a lot of things, you just end up, opening that and have a little chuckle, and there you go. And that goes a long way for me.
Well, I do want to say thank you very much to Jim for joining me today, subbing in from Drew. Obviously, he's in Chicago for the big con this weekend. What do people need to know about you, Jim?
Well, they need to come over and check out my lousy thumbnails on my YouTube channel. Just come over to the YouTube channel, Weird Science Comics, and then from there you can kind of go off to all the different podcasts and all different shows. So I have 9 weekly manga shows, 2 Marvel shows, 3 DC things, and a lot of other things as well. Just too many things. But go to the YouTube page first, and then you kind of go from there.
Well, that was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, we didn't have more really great comic books to talk about this week, but we will take what we can get, and we're happy to recommend those 5 comic books, including Superman versus Meatballs or Superman versus Meshi Chapter 3 or whatever. If you're at the end of the video and you're like, Wes, this is not fair, sir. I wanted more Thinking Critical today on my YouTube channels. In my viewing, it just so happens YouTube has looked at what you like to watch and what I like to create and decided this is the best video I ever created my entire life just for you. You should check it out right now.